A shivering girl whispered, "My mama's in the trees." The silent rancher took his rifle, found more than love. The frost was light that morning, just enough to make the grass crunch beneath Elijah Cole's boots as he rode out, rifle tied across his saddle, and silence settled over his shoulders like an old shawl. A pale mist hovered low across the valley, threading through trees like a memory too stubborn to leave. It was a kind of cold that bit without bleeding, a quiet, creeping thing, and it soaked into his bones the way loneliness sometimes did when he stayed out too long. He'd been fixing a fence. One of the end posts near the northern pine grove had given in during last week's wind. He could have waited till spring, let the cattle wander and graze where they pleased, but Elijah wasn't a man who left things broken. His land sat wide and open, shouldered by forests on 3 sides and ridged hills on the 4th. A body could go missing in that kind of country, swallowed up by trees or snow or time. It was why he noticed the little girl. Not because she cried, not because she moved, but because she didn't. She was huddled beneath a black pine just past the second ridge, knees tucked under her chin, arms wrapped so tightly around herself it looked like she was trying to hold her own bones together. Her dress was thin, torn at the seams, and her feet were bare. Dirt clung to her skin like soot. Her hair looked more bramble than braid. She couldn't have been more than 7, maybe 8, and she stared straight ahead, not at him, not at anything, just into the cold. Elijah dismounted, slow, like one might approach a skittish foal or something wounded and watching. The girl didn't blink. "You hurtin'?" His voice came low, dusted with gravel, rarely used but not unkind. The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. He stepped closer. "Where's your folks?" She blinked once, slow, then a whisper, too thin to be called a voice. "My mama's in the trees." Elijah didn't move. The wind rustled overhead, bare branches scraping against each other like dry bones. There was something solemn in the way she said it, something final, not a child's imagining, not play. She didn't look up at him. She didn't ask for help. Still, he pulled off his coat, wrapped it around her. She flinched at the touch, but didn't fight it. Her skin was cold as creek stone. He could feel how little she weighed when he lifted her, felt her ribs through cloth. She smelled of smoke and bark and something burnt, like the forest had tried to keep her and failed. He set her gently across the saddle, then climbed up behind and held her steady. She leaned into his chest, not by choice but by gravity. Neither spoke the whole way back. Elijah's ranch sat in the crook of a long bend where the hills opened just enough to catch sunlight by afternoon. The house was plain, timber and stone, built more for shelter than show. He'd lived in it near 20 years. His horse knew the way without asking. Inside, he stirred the fire, brought water to boil, and set about warming the place while the girl sat near the hearth, legs drawn up beneath the coat. She watched him like a deer might, unmoving, wide-eyed, one step from vanishing. He didn't ask anything yet, just worked quiet. When the water was hot, he knelt beside her and took one of her feet in his hand. It was scraped raw, the skin tore at the heel. She hissed, but didn't pull away. He cleaned the wounds gently, wrapped them in linen, then did the other. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, "Ella, that's a strong name." She said nothing. He fixed stew, thick with beans and salted beef, and poured a little into a wooden bowl. She sniffed at it, but didn't touch the spoon until he stepped away. When he turned back, the bowl was empty. The firelight flickered over her face, casting long shadows beneath her eyes. He saw then how tired she was, how some part of her, some deeper part, had shut itself behind a door and wasn't ready to open. He recognized that kind of hurt. He'd once worn it himself. He brought a blanket from the back room, thick and smelling faintly of cedar. She didn't resist when he wrapped it around her, didn't thank him either, just curled up on the woven rug near the hearth and closed her eyes. That night, Elijah sat by the window with the rifle across his lap. The wind moaned against the walls, and owls called from the dark. He thought of tracks in the snow, of cabins gone cold, of men who didn't deserve to be called men. He'd buried his wife 12 winters ago, buried the baby with her, small and still and unnamed. The ache had gone quiet since then, but never gone. Near dawn, The girl woke screaming. Not loud, just raw, like something torn loose inside her. Elijah was there in seconds, kneeling beside her as she thrashed under the blanket. He said her name once, then again, and when her eyes opened wild and shining, she clutched his arm with both hands. "He's coming," she whispered. "He's going to find her." Elijah didn't ask who, didn't press, just rested a steady hand on her shoulder until the trembling slowed. After, when she drifted back to sleep, he stood on the porch and watched the trees. The sky was turning silver with the first light of morning, but the woods still held too much dark. No birdsong, no wind, just silence, thick and watchful. Inside, Ella curled tighter into herself, like something small remembering how to breathe. By afternoon, she spoke again. "My mama said I'd fire my fingers." Elijah looked up from the kettle. "That's so." She said I made things happen. Said it scared him. That's why he got mean. He waited. She told me to run. Told me not to look back. He nodded once. "You did good." She didn't answer. Later, he fetched an old wooden box on the shelf above the hearth and opened it slowly. Inside were small things, buttons, folded cloth, a tin soldier missing an arm. Things his wife had tucked away before the birthing came early, and everything went wrong. He placed the soldier on the floor near Ella, said nothing. After a moment, she picked it up, turned it over in her hands. She didn't smile, but her fingers held it gently, like it mattered. That night, she let him braid her hair. It was a clumsy braid, loose in places, uneven, but she didn't seem to mind. Her eyes drifted closed as he worked, and he realized he'd forgotten the last time he touched another soul with care. "You keep that locket for someone?" he asked softly. Ella's hand flew to her chest, closing around the silver locket she wore on a string. "It's hers." He nodded. "It's safe here." They sat in silence a long while. Elijah stared into the fire. He could feel something shifting. Not in her, not yet, but in him, like the land in spring, thawing slow, a tightness unwinding in his chest. A reason, maybe, to keep the porch light burning. Outside, the trees whispered, not with menace, just with memory. He glanced at the rifle leaned by the door. He didn't know who she was running from or what waited in the dark. But if it came calling, it'd find him standing between her and the night. By morning, Ella was sleeping deep and still, her hand curled around the tin soldier, the blanket pulled to her chin. Elijah stepped out onto the porch. The frost was melting. The clouds were low and gray, pressed tight to the hills. He knew something was coming. He didn't know when or how or who, but the girl hadn't come out of nowhere. No one appears like that unless they're trying to escape something cruel. He looked back through the window. Ella's fire hadn't gone out, just dim for a while. He could see it now, glowing faint in the quiet, waiting. He'd tend to that flame until she could carry it herself. And if anything tried to take it from her, it'd have to pass through him first. The days grew quieter after that. Elijah didn't ask for more than she gave. He cooked, mended, rode fence lines. She watched him work from the porch with a wool shawl around her shoulders and that silver locket always resting like a talisman against her chest. She spoke when she needed to, answered with nods or silence when she didn't. It was a rhythm that suited them both, soft-footed, slow, like two creatures half hiding from the past. But some part of her never looked away from the trees. There was something about the pines that held her, as if she expected them to part at any moment and spill out something awful. One morning, Elijah saddled the horse and packed a tin of biscuits and jerky. He handed her a smaller coat, one she could grow into, and said nothing when she climbed up behind him, arms wrapped around his waist. He followed the creek north, moving through country the color of pewter. The pines thickened there, leaning close like old gossipers. Wind combed their tops in long, moaning passes. Birds didn't sing. The world had the hush of a church no longer used. She guided him without speaking, pulling his coat left or right when forks split, pointing once toward a crooked boulder shaped like a hunched man. After an hour, she tapped his arm and he stopped. She slid off the horse before he could catch her, boots sinking in half-frozen mud. She walked ahead, slow, like the ground might not welcome her back. He followed, heart thudding slow but heavy. Then he saw it. The cabin was barely that. A ruin folded into itself, roof sunken like a cave chest. One wall stood crooked, half-burnt and black. The other sides had collapsed inward, ash mingling with dirt and rot. Around it, broken things, charred kettles, a melted lantern, cracked jars. It smelled faintly of smoke, even though the fire had died weeks ago. Ella stood at the edge of it all, arms by her side, fingers clenched into fists. She said to run. She said quietly, said don't look back. He stepped closer. The air was heavy, as though the trees were holding something in. She built this, she said, with her own hands. The first place that was hers, just hers. She crouched near a burnt beam and ran her fingers over it like it was a grave marker. She called it our little kingdom, said the trees would keep us. Elijah knelt beside her. Beneath the ashes, half buried in the soot, was a small tin spoon, bent at the handle. She saw it, too. Her mouth trembled. She was singing that night, humming, like she always did when she didn't want me to know she was scared. Ella didn't cry, but her voice broke, and when Elijah put a hand on her back, she didn't pull away. He found us, she whispered. He waited till dark, burned it while we were inside. She pushed me out the window, said to hide. Elijah's breath clouded in the air. He closed his eyes briefly, swallowed the old ache rising in his throat. He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Not yet. There were boot prints near the edge of the ruin. Not his. Not hers. Newer than the rest. Elijah's eyes narrowed. He shifted, scanning the trees, but the woods held their silence. He stood slowly, helped Ella to her feet, and walked the perimeter. A trail curved off to the east, soft with recent snow, marked by something dragged. Maybe a sack, maybe a boot. We'll come back with shovels, he said. Make things proper. Ella nodded once, then looked back toward the trees. Do you think the fire heard her? She asked. What do you mean? She whispered to it right before it got too big, said if it had to take her, to do it fast. Elijah didn't speak. The ride back was longer. The sky had gone a dull white, the kind that made animals restless. His horse picked up its pace without urging. Somewhere to the west, thunder murmured behind the hills. That night, the storm broke open. Wind howled to the rafters. Snow fell sideways in thick sheets, and the barn door slammed so hard it cracked. Elijah lashed it shut with rope, pulled the shutters tight, and checked the rifle's chamber once, then twice. Not from panic, just preparation. Ella sat curled on the cot, wrapped in blankets, her locket glowing softly in the firelight. When he returned to the room, she was staring at it. She told me to keep it shut, she said. Said the picture inside would fade if I looked too often. You ever open it? She shook her head. Only once, after the fire. It still smells like her. Elijah sat across from her, folding his hands. The lamp flickered. The storm knocked again at the windows, impatient. I used to think storms were angry, she said. But Mama said they were just lonely, that sometimes the sky gets full of feelings and has to let go. He studied her face, the delicate stillness of it. The old soul wound up in those young eyes. What happened after you ran? He asked gently. I hid near the rocks, under that place where moss grows thick. I stayed there all night till the wind stopped. Then I walked. I didn't know where, just away. How far did you come? She shrugged. I counted 50 creeks, maybe more. He let that settle. Then she added quieter, I think he's still out there. Elijah didn't look away. If he comes, he won't make it past me. She nodded, slowly, but there was doubt in her posture. Not in him. He could see that, but in the world's ability to keep its promises. He stood and went to the shelf. From behind an old ledger, he pulled a small bundle, a length of twine, a block of soap, and a compass. He placed it on the table near her. Things I kept for no good reason, he said. Maybe they were meant for something after all. She touched the compass, turning it slowly, as if learning the language of direction all over again. That night, The wind shook the walls, and the storm sang in long, ragged howls. But the fire held, the roof held, and inside, there were two souls learning the edges of one another, building something slow and quiet out of warmth and shared stillness. Elijah sat near the window long after she slept. The rifle leaned beside him. The lantern burned low, and in the distance, just past a frozen creek, he saw it. A flicker, a flash of orange, then gone, like a match lit and snuffed too quickly. Then, again, far off but deliberate, not lightning, a fire, small, controlled, not by the storm's hand, but someone else's. And just beyond the edge of the woods, a figure, too far make out, too still to be passing through. Elijah stood, slow and quiet, the hair on his arms rising. He reached for the rifle, then looked back at the girl, still sleeping, hand curled near her face, silver locket resting just above her heart. He didn't wake her. He watched the trees. The storm raged on. Snow lingered long after the storm passed, covering the valley in a stillness too perfect to trust. The world had gone white and soft, like it wanted to pretend it had nothing to do with the night before. But Elijah didn't believe in such forgetfulness. He knew better than to trust the quiet. Some silences were earned, others were bait. He fed the horses early, checked the barn, left fresh tracks in the snow where none should have been. He counted them twice. 3 sets. One is one Ella's, and another circling back from the woods, shallow tread, pointed toes, measured, watching. He said nothing to her that morning, just handed her a tin mug of warm milk and stood at the window, chewing on a silence too heavy to swallow. Ella was quieter, too, but not in fear, in thought. She moved around the cabin like someone remembering a song she didn't know she'd forgotten. She picked up Elijah's old tools and put them in a row on the windowsill. She swept the ash from the fireplace without being asked. She folded the blanket at the end of the cot 3 times, then unfolded it and folded it again neater. Something inside her had begun to settle. Elijah watched all this with a guarded softness, the way he watched the slow budding of spring after a long freeze, hopeful but ready for snow to return. By mid-morning, she looked up from where she sat tracing lines in the frost on the window and said, "I want to show you something." He nodded, grabbed his coat, and followed her into the cold. She led him past the barn, through the trees, to a low stretch of earth where the creek had pooled, now frozen in place. She walked to the edge and crouched. Carefully, she pulled a handful of small stones from her pocket, each one smooth, flat, and different in color. She began placing them, one by one, in a circle. "Mama taught me," she said, "a ring for safety, for spirits to rest." He knelt beside her. "For her?" She nodded. "And for me?" He reached into his own pocket, pulled out a coin he no longer carried for spending, a silver dollar from 1880. His father had given it to him the day he left home, told him to keep it till something mattered more than the coin did. He pressed it into the snow beside her stones. "She like that," Ella said, her voice barely louder than the wind. That evening, they ate slow and quiet, as if neither wanted to wake whatever peace they'd carved from the cold. Then, just before the fire burned down, she asked, "Do you want to know about him?" Elijah looked at her over the rim of his mug. Her eyes weren't afraid, just clear like winter glass. "He wasn't my real daddy," she began. "He bought her, said she was too pretty to waste. I was just part of the bargain. He didn't want me." Her hands were still, folded in her lap. She tried to leave once. "He found us. Said next time he'd burn the world down." Elijah didn't interrupt. He let her speak like it hurt and healed her all at once. He used to say he had fire in him, that when he got mad, it turned his eyes red. Mama said he was born mean, that there wasn't anything in him but smoke. She glanced toward the door, toward the woods, and her voice dipped to a whisper. "He's the one who burned the cabin." A pause. She was still inside. Elijah's jaw tightened. His hands curled slow around the mug. "I think he was trying to burn me too," she said. "But I got out." He didn't reach for her, didn't speak comfort, just sat beside her in the same still way he always did, present, solid, warm without demanding anything in return. "You think he followed me?" she asked, softer now. "You think he saw which way I ran?" "I think men like him don't forget what they think they own," Elijah said. "But I also think he didn't reckon on who'd be waiting." She nodded once, solemn. That night, neither of them slept much. Elijah dozed in the rocker, rifle across his knees. He dreamed of red eyes behind trees, and fire that didn't burn wood but memories. When dawn broke pale and pink across the hills, it brought with it tracks in the snow. Clearer this time. Closer. One set, leading from the tree line to the barn and back. No knock. No sound. Just presence. Elijah saddled the horse by midday and rode into town. Ella tucked safe behind a locked door, a pistol on the table, and was stacked high by the fire. He told her not to open the door for anyone but him. It took most of the day to reach the sheriff. The man was half drunk, full of excuses. Said they didn't have the men to ride out just for a story. Said a lot of things Elijah had no time for. By sunset, Elijah was riding hard back through the snow. The sky had bruised itself deep purple by the time he crested the ridge and saw smoke. Not thick, not fire, just enough to be a warning. He didn't race, didn't shout, just gripped the rifle tighter and rode through the dark like a man who knew fear but didn't let it steer. The cabin stood intact. Lights inside, but the barn door hung crooked and the horse was missing. He stepped in quiet, heart thudding against ribs. Ella sat in the far corner, knees tucked up, the locket tight in her grip. She looked up when she saw him and whispered, "He was here." Elijah scanned the room. No footprints on the floor. No sign of a break-in. But a match lay spent near the door. A mark had been carved into the wood above the latch. 2 lines. A crooked smile beneath. "I didn't scream," she said. "He knocked. Just once. I didn't move." "You did right," Elijah murmured, crouching beside her. She stared at the symbol, voice hollow. "He says he always knows where I am. Says the fire tells him." Elijah looked at her. Really looked. "You're not something to be hunted," he said. "You're someone worth guarding." She breathed out slow, a shiver passing through her. Outside, the wind picked up. The pines bent toward the house. Not threatening, just watchful. He stayed up all that night. The next morning, he wrote a letter, not to the sheriff, to the man. He nailed it to a tree near the old trail, just where the pines thinned. 3 words, carved deep into the bark. "She is mine." He didn't know if the man would see it, but it didn't matter. The truth had been spoken. That evening, Ella helped him carry logs of porch. She didn't speak much, but her hands were steady, her eyes clear. When the sun dipped low and the frost returned, she asked, "Do you think it's wrong to be happy again?" He turned to her quiet. "No," he said, "I think it's brave." And for the first time since she arrived, she smiled. Not wide, not long, but it was real. He held on to that smile as night fell. But deep in the woods, beyond the reach of firelight, something moved. A shape, a shadow. And this time, it didn't turn back. The wind changed that morning. It came down the mountain slow and deliberate, curling to the pines like a scent someone forgot. Smoke with oil, the sharp bite of scorched leather. It wasn't loud, not yet, just present. The kind of presence that made birds go quiet and dogs tuck their tails. Elijah felt it before he stepped out the door. That hush in the bones. That old whisper in the blood. He stood on the porch, boots planted firm, coffee cooling in his hand. He didn't drink it, just watched the tree line. Nothing moved, but still he knew. Ella felt it too. She came out without needing to be called, her coat buttoned high, her eyes sharp. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just stood beside him. The cabin had stopped being a shelter and started being a stand. He sent her back in, made sure the rifle was loaded. The bolt slid quiet and clean, set the pistol on the table where she could reach it fast. He didn't want her to use it, but he wanted her to have the choice. The hours crept. Snow fell slow, in small flakes like drifting ash. The valley waited, breath held. And then, just before dusk, a crow cried once. Low, flat. The horses in the barn shifted. The pine needles rustled not from breeze, but from breath. A figure stepped out from the trees. Long coat, burned at the edges. Hat pulled low. A scar split the face like dried creeked. One eye white, the other burning red as embers. Not bloodshot, not fevered, just red. Ella stood in the doorway behind Elijah. He didn't look at her, but he felt her there, still as stone. "You took what's mine," the man called out. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Elijah didn't answer right away. He stepped down the porch slow, boots sinking into the snow, rifle slung at his side, not raised. "She ain't yours," Elijah said. "You lost the right to speak her name the day you lit that fire." The man smiled like splinters. "Didn't come to talk," he said. "Came to finish." Ella didn't scream, didn't run. She stepped down behind Elijah and stood with her hands and fists and her shoulders set, like someone who'd been afraid too long and found the taste of her own voice again. "She ain't hiding," Elijah said. "You want fire, you'll find it here." The man moved fast, faster than Elijah expected. The first shot rang out and missed, whistled past Elijah's ear and hit the porch beam. Elijah didn't flinch. He fired once, hit the man in the shoulder. He staggered, dropped to one knee. The second shot came from Ella. Her hands didn't shake. It hit the earth beside the man's feet, intentional, not missed. A warning. The man looked up, eyes burning like coals ready to go cold. "You don't scare easy," he said, blood dark on his sleeve. "No," she said, "not anymore." And something in him faltered, because he had come to burn down weakness. But there was no weakness here. There was a girl who had walked through fire and chosen not to scream. There was a man who stood in front of her not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And there was silence, deep, old, unafraid. The man backed away slow, left a trail of blood in the snow. Didn't run, just faded back into the trees, like smoke curling back into the dark it came from. Elijah didn't follow. Some devils aren't chased. They're watched till they disappear. He turned to Ella. She was shaking now, not from fear, but from the thunder after lightning, from the stillness after a scream never shouted. He took the rifle from her hands, set it down, held her wrists. "You did right," he whispered. She nodded, then leaned into him slow, like a branch bending after too much snow. They didn't speak for a long time, just stood there in the white hush of evening, the cabin behind them glowing with hearthlight. That night, she unpacked her things. Not much, just a bundle of cloth, the locket, a handful of smooth stones. She placed the stones back in their circle on the windowsill, set the locket on the mantel. It stayed there from then on. In the days that followed, the skies softened. Spring crept through cracks in the snow. The birds returned. First one, then many. The wind warmed. Ella laughed one afternoon while splitting kindling. It startled Elijah, not because it was loud, but because it was the sound of something growing where nothing had grown in years. He came home from the river one evening and found she'd baked bread, badly, but proudly. It was flat and burnt on one side. He ate every bite. They never talked much about what could be named between them, not in words, but in how they moved around each other, in how he left his coat near the fire when she was cold, in how she mended the hole in his glove and didn't say a word about it, in how one night she whispered, "Do you think we could plant something here?" And he said, "We already did." The tracks never came back. The man with red eyes became a shadow, and then less than that. One morning, long after winter had turned to green, Ella stood on the porch and saw smoke rise. Not dark, not fire, just soft and gray from a chimney that hadn't burned for a while. Elijah came out beside her. She took his hand, and in that quiet moment, nothing chased them. Nothing claimed them. They were just two people on a porch with smoke in the air and something like family between them. And if you're out there someday, walking through woods where the wind smells like pine and the ground feels steady under your boots, you might come upon a cabin tucked quiet near the trees. You'll know it by the circle of stones on the windowsill, by the way the smoke curls from the chimney like a promise, by the silence, not empty, but full. And maybe you'll remember then that some people survive fire, Others become it, and some find a home in its warmth. Let that truth stay with you, like locket silver in your pocket, like a hand you thought would never hold yours again, like the sound of someone laughing for the first time in years, and the way it echoes, soft and sure, through the woods. Ask ChatGPT. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and tap the bell icon for more soulful Wild West tales whispered by the fire. Ask ChatGPT.